Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live, right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I am Bryson Carver, and we've got a great show for y'all tonight. My man Dak Prescott is calling this year his golden year because his birthday is on July the 29th. Happy, very late birthday to Dak Prescott. Happy birthday to Tom Brady as well. But Dak just celebrated his 29th birthday, and his birthday is July 29th. So I guess how that works, it's his golden birthday. And that is what he has said that this will be this year. It didn't specify. And so because he didn't specify, I think there's a yes and a no aspect of what I think will and won't be Dak's golden year. I'll talk about that, as well as some outlandish comments, I should say more outlandish comments, about Steph Curry by a basketball player who, as it stands right now, is not even in the NBA. I'll get to that later in the show, as well as Kevin Durant's reported meeting with Joe Tsai, who is the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, how that possibly could have went, and you know, where the KD trade rumors and his possible trade stands right now. And at the end of the show, I will discuss my top 10 players in the NFL. This is a tricky one. Top 10 baseball players and basketball players is especially at basketball. It's pretty cut and dry. Football, it's tough because we know the quarterback is infinitely more valuable than any other position. But when we're talking about overall skill, value to their team, and what they do, I think I've got a top 10 list. I feel very, very, very strongly about it. I'll get to that later in the show. But first, the king, LeBron James. A lot of rumors going around right now what he will do in terms of a possible contract negotiation with the Lakers. As it has been reported, Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, Clutch Sports, is talking with the Lakers, or in negotiations with the Lakers, about a possible 2-year extension that would pay LeBron James $97.1 million. So that contract would take LeBron James, again, it would be another 3 years with the Los Angeles Lakers, starting with this year. And it would go to, I guess that would be 2025, I guess. But here's the thing I think LeBron is doing a very good job with in these negotiations. So with LeBron, we know he's a very calculated businessman. I mean, people don't just come from nothing like LeBron did and become a billionaire by accident. Okay. Got to make very, very calculated moves. He's part of multiple ownership groups, Manchester United. He's part of the Fenway Sports Group that owns the Boston Red Sox. LeBron is a businessman, and we know he's made millions upon millions of dollars just playing basketball. And you're talking about the lifetime contract with Nike. LeBron's doing okay financially, but I think he's doing a really good job as a businessman, because he's saying, hold on a second. Okay, I can become a free agent next summer in 2023. Coming into the season, seriously look at the Lakers as a championship contender in a Western Conference that is absolutely going to be better this year than it was a year ago? Denver's going to be healthy. The Clippers going to be healthy. Golden State's going to be better. Dallas is possibly going to be better with the addition of Christian Wood. Phoenix isn't going anywhere. They basically got the same team they brought out last year, and for their playoff woes, they did win 64 games. For what it's worth, we don't look at the Lakers as a serious championship threat this year, unless they made a drastic move or two this offseason or some point this coming season. And so LeBron knows, okay, big questions about whether or not this team can win a title. I do still believe LeBron James is in the business of winning championships. I don't think the Lakers winning 33 games last year set well with him. I think there's a reason that, with all that's been going on, with the Red Sox and I'm sorry, not with the Red Sox, with the Lakers and all the turmoil, I think it's safe to say that there's a lot of uncertainty. And so with LeBron, I think what's going on with him is this. You say, okay, why would he not sign this deal? Okay, he can make more money elsewhere. Like I said, LeBron's a billionaire. Okay. LeBron is looking at this at the perspective, okay, let's say this team does not win a championship this year, and we don't think they will. Let's say they don't even sniff a championship. Let's say, best case scenario, they're the 6 or 7 seed in the West and get bounced in the first round. Okay, that would now be 3 straight years where the furthest LeBron James has gotten in the postseason is the first round. That would be 4 out of 5 years where that would be the case. Because we know, first year in LA, to LeBron, in LeBron's defense, he did get injured. He got hurt at Christmas against Golden State, and the Lakers just pretty much, plummeted from there. They missed the playoffs. The next year, we know they won the championship in the bubble, beating the Miami Heat to do that. And LeBron won the Finals MVP. The following year, first round exit. Last year, didn't even make the play-in tournament, much less the playoffs. This year, not a whole lot of optimism. So the thing with the Lakers is, or with what LeBron's looking at, for my horrible move, thinking if I'm LeBron James, for my horrible move, and LeBron knows it was a bad move, in bringing Russell Westbrook into the equation a year ago, thinking that he could fix Westbrook. He understands it was a mistake now. We saw them at the Summer League game a few weeks ago, watching the Lakers Summer League team on opposite ends of the court. And we know there's a lot of socializing anytime NBA players go to Summer League games, even if it's two NBA players from separate teams. There's a lot of socializing, between NBA players. It's an NBA community. It's a big family. Russell Westbrook and LeBron James, who are teammates, did not even speak to each other. Okay, so they are not on good terms. LeBron understands that was a big, big mistake bringing Westbrook along for the ride. But for LeBron's bad mistake, the Lakers have made quite a few more. Number one, trusting Anthony Davis to be the possible future of the franchise after the Lakers won the championship in 2020. Massive mistake. I said at the time, I remember saying the show, and I was higher on Anthony Davis at the time. Everybody was. He just won a championship and was great in the playoffs. Saying KD's great. Is he face of a championship franchise great? Not just any franchise. We're talking about the Lakers here. We're talking about the purple and gold, the most storied franchise in the NBA. This isn't just any ho-hum franchise. This isn't Detroit, okay? I wasn't sure if they could, and they kind of handed the keys to the franchise to AD over LeBron, and LeBron's like, okay, all right, I'll trust him. He's 27, 28 years old. He should be entering his prime now, and what happened? AD showed up to that camp out of shape, and LeBron knew from that point on he couldn't trust him. How about the fact that for all the Lakers fans, complaining about Frank Vogel, who I, defended like crazy last season. Hey, Monty Williams, who I think we all agree is a top 5 coach in the NBA. He could have taken the Lakers job. He wanted it, but the Lakers didn't. And Ty Lue wanted to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers rather than the Clippers, or be an assistant coach at the time for the Clippers. And the Lakers said, no, you can't pick your own staff. Ty Lue said, okay, I would rather be an assistant coach on the LA Clippers than be the head coach of the Lakers if you are not going to let me dictate my own staff. We know the horrendous free agent moves of going out and getting an older Dwight Howard, going out and getting Kent Bazemore, Wayne Ellington. I mean, old. I made fun of the Lakers all season last year because I said, this is actually true, given the average age of the players, it was the oldest roster in NBA history. And it all the Melo move worked somewhat. Outside of that, basically every free agent move outside of Malik Monk was a disaster for the Lakers. Disaster. So LeBron's like, okay, I made one bad move by adding Russell Westbrook. And now Jeannie Buss and the franchise is just going to ghost me? Now Jeannie Buss has got kind of an icy relationship with me? Rob Pelinka as well? I made one bad move. Y'all made like 5, okay, since I've been in a Laker uniform. And so LeBron said, no, I'm going to wait. Now, maybe in a couple weeks, LeBron signs this extension, spends the rest of his career in LA. After all, it has been incredibly beneficial for his business. He got uninterrupted. All these different things. His brand with Nike. I mean, his net worth, I think, has almost doubled since he's been in LA. So it's been very beneficial. That city's been very beneficial to LeBron in terms of his business. Why? Because he's a superstar. LA is a city that is very beneficial to superstars. But if LeBron is still in the business of winning titles, which I believe even in year 20, I think he is still absolutely unequivocally a top 3 player in the NBA. Don't think he's the best anymore, but he is clearly a top 3 player in the NBA today. I think LeBron's sitting back is like, no. I don't think he's asking for a trade, but $97 million as opposed to, say, $85 million, $75 million. That doesn't make a difference to LeBron James. He's a billionaire, okay? So he's going to what I believe is going to happen is that the talks for a contract extension are going to fall through between the Lakers and between Rich Paul and Clutch Sports. LeBron is going to play this season. We'll see what happens with the Lakers. I think best case scenario that they can hope for is to be the 6th seed, avoid the play-in tournament, and they get bounced in the first round by, say, like a Clippers or a Denver Nuggets or a Memphis Grizzlies. Or Warriors if they get the 8th seed. Point is, this team's not competing for titles. I think LeBron still wants to compete for titles. That's why I think he hasn't fully committed to signing this 2-year extension. That's why I think it's going to happen. We do have a comment from my man Barry Grant Jr., who is a huge Lakers fan and a huge LeBron fan. He says LeBron doesn't want to leave. He just needs to see what the plans are. Jeannie Buss needs to stop living in the past and respect the star she currently has. Yeah, I definitely 100% agree with you, Barry, on your Jeannie Buss point about living in the past. It feels like she is maybe struggling a little bit, maybe living in the shadow of her father, the great Dr. Jerry Buss. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I do think she is sort of looking over the fact, it feels that way, I think, Barry, that she has LeBron James on her roster. And while he's not at the peak of his powers anymore, he's still great, okay? This is the 2nd greatest basketball player of all time we're talking about. He is still clearly a top 3 player in the league. He is still clearly can still be the best player on a title team. The question is that relationship going to continue to sour, or is it going to, take a turn for the better? Who knows? But I do think LeBron is making the correct move in not signing this extension immediately. I think he's going to play the season out, and I think he is going to hit the open market next summer. Why not? Test the waters. We all know LeBron James wants to play with his son, Bronny, which, by the way, Bronny is a very good basketball player. He is going to make the National Basketball Association whenever the time comes for him. But Bryce James, man, that kid's good. I'm telling you right now, Bryce James is something else. And Barry says talking about Jeannie Buss, she's so delusional. She is. And I tried to tell you, Barry, I tried to tell Laker fans, I was one of the first people to publicly criticize Jeannie Buss for some of the moves that she's made and some of the decisions in terms of, relationships with people in the front office, not really, I guess, having it feels like she didn't really trust herself in terms of basketball decisions when she was actually giving the decisions to people who don't exactly have a great history with putting together teams. Phil Jackson, the Rambus family, and Rob Pelinka. Trust your gut, Jeannie. And I feel like that's where she's struggled in that area. John Rivera, shout out John, Fan Perspective Podcast. He says Lakers got what they want, a ring, but this is the king we're talking about here. Yeah, and that's the thing is, any team that has a player at the level of LeBron James, any team, even though LeBron's in year 20, we know what this man can still do. You are in the business of winning titles. You are in the business of putting together the best possible team to win a championship. Because, last I checked, it's not every day that you have one of the 2 greatest basketball players to ever live, running the operation, running the team. So you got to take advantage, strike while the iron's hot. Because 2 years from now, when LeBron, I think 2 years from now, he probably won't have the ability to be the best player in a championship team. Strike while the iron's hot. Take advantage now while you can. At the end of the day, Lakers are in a tizzy, man. They are in a tizzy. So we'll see what plays out from here. But I do think, without a question, the relationship between LeBron, Pelinka, Jeannie, the entire Lakers front office, especially that of Rich Paul, is kind of soured a little bit. John says, I think he will sign it this year. I think it's a 1-and-1 deal. Possibly. But I do think LeBron still wants to. I think he is at the stage of his career, because we know about LeBron starting with his years in Miami, is he would sign these 2-year deals. And like when he came to Cleveland, right? He signed a 2-year deal. The goal was to bring a championship back to Cleveland. He succeeded in his 2nd year. He signed another 2-year deal, played that, those 2 years out, goes to LA on a 4-year contract, plays that out. Yeah, he's played that out, right? No, this is the last year of his contract that he initially signed with the Lakers back in 2018. And so look, LeBron's not the type to ask for trades. He's always finished out every contract he's signed. But yeah, it could be 1-on-1 deal. We'll see. But I do think LeBron is going to weigh his options this summer. That's just what I think is going to happen. But is he competing for titles this year? Nah. All right, moving on to a team that is competing for championships. As a matter of fact, is the defending NBA champions. That would be my Golden State Warriors, led by the best player on the planet, Mr. Wardell Stephen Curry II. Of course, I had to rep the MVP, wear the Curry brand hat in my night T-shirt, put him to sleep, Steph. And man, Eminem had a line about this in the song with Dr. Dre. The fast line. Nowadays, everybody wants all. They got something to say, but nothing comes out when he moved the lips. Just a bunch of gibberish, and you know what's act like they forgot about Dre. That's what it feels like right now with Steph. It feels like a lot of folks, especially young players, and the player I'm about to mention is still fairly young, seems to forget who they're talking about when they're talking about a guy who's won 2 MVPs, one of them being unanimous. It's never been done before, and a 4-time MVP in the reigning finals MVP. Because you had my man, love Grant Williams. That's my guy right there. You have no idea how happy I was when he played the way he played in that Game 7 against the Milwaukee Bucks. He was great. I love Grant Williams. He's a Tennessee guy, great kid. I think he's the vice president of the Players Association. Love Grant Williams. Love him. He's a genius too. He plays chess. Love Grant Williams. But he said the night actually happened to be the night of the ESPYs. He said that we were better. The Celtics, we were a better team than Golden State. We were just more disciplined. They were just more disciplined. Well, you can't get to the finals just off of discipline. What makes Golden State the dynasty they are is that they're talented and disciplined. Maybe Boston can pick that up along the way. But you had Grant Williams saying that. You had Tyler Hero the other day saying that if we were healthy, the Miami Heat, if we were healthy, we would have won the finals. Basically saying we would have beaten Golden State. Well, couldn't even get past Boston. Okay, it took a miraculous late fourth quarter run in Game 7 just to have a shot to beat the Boston Celtics, okay? Then you have this Mike James guy, okay? Mike James, who is in the Euroleague. I've always kind of liked him. I thought he had a nice year for the Brooklyn Nets a couple years ago. Mike James, a nice NBA player, possible NBA player, is not in the league today. He's a good basketball player. But he was on a podcast recently, and he was talking about Steph Curry. The podcast host asked Mike James to list his top 5 players in the NBA, and let's just, take a look.
In my top 5, I got Kev, Bron, Embiid, Giannis. And then I got to think. It get tough after that.
It just blows my mind Steph isn't top 5 for anybody.
How he plays and how he gets stuff off, it's just kind of one-dimensional at times. If we put Luka, Embiid, Bron, KD, and Giannis on any team in the world, they're gonna be who they are right there as soon as you put them in there. I don't know about that for Steph. I think it's a little murky for Steph.
Surely Mike James is the only player who believes this. I really hope that that's the case. If you would have put this quote in front of me, not attached a name to it, not attached a year to it, and you would have said, okay, that Mike James, or not, that somebody said this particular quote about Steph Curry. You said, and you would have asked me, okay, tell me what year this was spoken. I probably would have guessed 2009. Why 2009, you ask? Well, that was the year Steph Curry was drafted. And as there is with any prospect, there's always questions, especially with Steph, right? He's coming out of little old Davidson, coming out after his junior year. He's small. He's kind of skinny. Actually, he's very skinny. He wasn't in college. He was not a point guard. He was actually the 2 guard. And so the question was, could he shift into being an NBA point guard? Everybody knew he could shoot. That was never the issue with Steph. But, could he be the primary ball handler on an NBA team? Could he this? Could he that? And Steph, I think it's safe to say, answered all those questions and then some. But you got Mike James. And the quote, he said, there's a lot to unpack here. Before I do, I will have to say thank you, John, for the he appreciated my Eminem and Dr. Dre shout out. He said, LOL, that song is older than you. It is older than me. But the part that I got a kick out of was he said that his top 5 players in the NBA, By the way, all of them great. All of them have a case to be in the top 5, right? Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo. All of those guys have cases to be in the top 5. I'm not fighting against that. But he said, put those guys on any team in the NBA, and they would still be great. I agree. Put any of those 5 anywhere, they'd still be great. Now, put them in certain situations like, say, like Sacramento or Orlando. They wouldn't be exactly competing for championships, but they'd still be great. They'd still be great. But Steph, he said, his quote was, it's a little murky for Steph, right? You don't know if he could be just put him anywhere. You're not sure if he could be quite as successful. It could be quite as great. Okay. And what I get a kick out of is that Steph Curry was drafted by a Golden State Warriors franchise in 2009 who had made the playoffs once in the last 2 decades. He was drafted by a franchise that had for 30-something years, 35 years, 34 years when he was drafted, had not won an NBA championship. So not exactly a recent history of winning. Okay, the biggest Warrior highlights were of Run TMC in the 90s, in the early 90s, were of the We Believe team led by Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes, all those guys. Shout out to the We Believe team of 07. But that was about all that Dub Nation had to be excited about. Now, granted, Dub Nation still was as loud and proud as ever. That's what makes it the greatest fan base in the NBA. Point being, Golden State didn't make the playoffs till Steph Curry's 4th year. We all know he battled a ton of ankle injuries through his first 3 years. His first year actually finished second to Tyreek Evans for Rookie of the Year. And so people are like, okay, he's good, but, we're not sure if he could be a great player yet. And then he leads the Warriors to the playoffs in 2013, and he leads the Warriors to a first-round upset over the 3rd seed Denver Nuggets, and they go on to lose in 6 games of the second round to the San Antonio Spurs. But you're like, okay, this is a big step for Golden State. Okay, this is a successful season. They come back the following season. They actually upped their win total to 50 wins, but they lost in the first round to the LA Clippers. They hire Steve Kerr. They bring in veterans. The past year, they brought in Andre Iguodala. They had switched Iguodala and David Lee out of the starting lineup, inserted Draymond Green and Harrison Barnes, and off went the Warriors. We know after a couple of years of finals appearances with an NBA championship in 2015, they added Kevin Durant, won 2 more titles, went to the finals again in 2019, and then these last couple of years, safe to say, was pretty rough. Worst record in the league in 2020 and missed out in the playoffs in 2021. And this year, of course, the 2022 NBA champions. But one-dimensional. You could put Steph Curry anywhere and a little murky. You're not sure he could be as great. And then the one-dimensional thing I thought was really funny. So essentially saying that Steph is just a shooter. Now, granted, we know Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. Nobody even argues that. But essentially saying that is all he is. He's one-dimensional. It's all he can do is shoot. Well, he's also one of the 2 or 3 greatest ball handlers of all time. That we know. We know that he is one of the greater drivers to the basket for small players that we've seen in NBA history, especially in recent years since he's put on more muscle. We know he is no slouch on the defensive end of the floor. He has improved in recent years. We know his mid-range game is lethal. We know he can, like I said about the ball handling, break the ankles of your favorite player, then some. But he's one-dimensional, right? And Steph actually responded to that today at his camp. He was asked a question, how would these campers fare against you one-on-one? And Steph said, well, not too well, as one-dimensional as I am. And he, shared a laugh with it with the reporters. But I love this. That Steph has even 4 championships in, 2 MVPs in. And this is when you know you're great. When you've accomplished basically everything there is to be accomplished. LeBron has dealt with this. Giannis has dealt with this. You still got people questioning you and your greatness. It reminds me a little bit, to use an NFL example. It reminds me of when Tom Brady, I think up until the 28-3 comeback on Atlanta, this was the narrative about Tom Brady by some people. Oh, he's a system quarterback. Right? He's got the best coach in the NFL, and he's got the great defense and great offensive line and solid running games and good receivers. And they're just carrying him to Super Bowls, and he just is the beneficiary of it. He's good enough to win the Super Bowls with just incredible talent and coaching around him. And then Tom Brady left New England after the 2019 season, and Belichick has yet to win a playoff game. And Tom Brady actually has 5 playoff wins and a Super Bowl title and Super Bowl MVP. He's not a system quarterback, folks. You don't get 22, now 23 years in, and you're still considered by many possibly the best quarterback in the NFL. You're not Steph Curry. You don't win 2 MVPs. You don't win 4 championships. You don't accomplish all the things that he's accomplished. Going to the finals 6 times in 8 years by being one-dimensional. Come on now. Mike James, you're better than this. You know more basketball than you're portraying right now. Come on. It's gibberish. That's what it is. It's the Eminem Dr. Dre line. It's gibberish. Let's just put this to bed, okay? Like let's stop with this notion that, I mean, to me it's crazy. To me, if you don't think that Steph's the best player in the world, and most people don't think that, I'm in the minority. I don't care. I think he's the best player. Nobody's going to change my mind on that until proven otherwise. But if you don't think Steph's the best player, okay, that's fine. That's fine. If you want to say, Giannis, okay. But Steph is unquestionably in the top 3. As a matter of fact, I don't think the top 3 really is an argument, regardless of what order you put it in. I think it's Steph, Giannis, LeBron. That's my order, 1, 2, 3. But I mean, if you want to slide KD in there, he did just get swept in the first round against the team that Steph torched in the finals. I mean, shouldn't that mean something? He's won 1 playoff series without Steph. Steph's won a championship without KD. He won another one before KD got there. I'm just saying. Put him anywhere, they'd be great. Talking about, that's what Mike James said about Kevin Durant, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, LeBron James, and who was the other one he said? Joel Embiid. Put them anywhere. They'd be great. And I agree, they would be. But that's not the case for Steph. Come on. You're better than that, Mike James. Come on. You know you're better than that. I really hope, I'm really crossing my fingers that Mike James gets signed by an NBA team this offseason or during the season, and that he gets the opportunity to witness how one-dimensional that Mr. Curry is. I'm just saying. He's played against it before, obviously, but I just want to see it happen. I want to see how it all plays out. But I will say this as well before we move on to Dak Prescott, because I did want to touch on him today. Usually I wear my Dak hat. I'm actually wearing my Steph hat today. I think this might be the first time I've ever worn my Steph Curry hat on the show, so this is fun. But I've got my Dak Prescott hat, back there. So I'll just swap the Dak and Steph hats back and forth, man. That's my 2 favorite athletes in the world. Yeah, it is what it is. I love those 2 guys. But let's move on to Dak. Let's move on to the NFL. You saw the Hall of Fame game last night. I will say for a Hall of Fame game, it was slightly more entertaining than I thought it'd be. Usually it's kind of sloppy, a lot of penalties. I mean, we come to expect that, right? It's 3rd and 4th stringers, trying to make the team. We get that. It's the preseason. But yeah, it was fairly entertaining, right? The Raiders scored some points early. They moved the ball down the field well. I thought it was a solid night for Josh McDaniels, who, by the way, it was kind of like a homecoming for him. He grew up in Canton, Ohio. It was cool for the Raiders. It was interesting to watch at least the first half. I pretty much stopped watching after midway through the 3rd quarter. But shifting to the most interesting team in the NFL, year in and year out, the Dallas Cowboys. And Dak Prescott last week, a very late happy birthday to Dak Prescott, but he was celebrating his 29th birthday, and he dubbed this as his golden birthday. As a matter of fact, if I can pull up the quote right here, he said, quote, I told NFL.com, he said, quote, I plan for this to be the golden year. Talking about, it's July 29th is his birthday. He turned 29 years old. And so that, I guess that means something. So I guess my golden birthday will be June 28th of, what year that'd be? 2030, I guess. Yeah, 2030. No, 2031. Yeah, 2031 will be on my golden birthday. But point being, Dak's talking about this is going to be his golden year. Question is, what does Dak mean by his golden year? Does he mean that the Cowboys are going to get further than the playoffs than they've gotten since Dak has been the quarterback? Certainly further than last year when they won and done against the San Francisco 49ers. Does he mean it's going to be the best season of his career? Best numbers, maybe a higher, finish in the MVP race? I don't know. All I can do is guess. All I can do is speculate. And that's what I do. I give my opinions on the show, and my opinion is this. If Dak is talking about golden year in terms of the Cowboys competing for a Super Bowl, then I appreciate his optimism, but I don't see it happening. Even in an NFC that is kind of thin, let's be honest, I truly only see 2 clear-cut contenders to make the Super Bowl next year. The defending champion Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, actually the last 2 Super Bowl champions. I'm giving the 49ers a shot if Trey Lance pans out. If Trey Lance pans out, 49ers are absolutely contender. That's where it ends. Green Bay got significantly worse in the offseason, and now their left tackle, David Bakhtiari, is dealing with even more health issues. And he's probably, now that Devonte Adams guy, he's probably the second best player in the offense to Aaron Rodgers. And so he's, for the moment, out. And Aaron Rodgers' receiving group is probably about as thin as it's been since he's been the Green Bay quarterback. It's about as bad as New England's at this point. Okay, Green Bay is not a contender. Minnesota, well, I do think they will beat Green Bay for the division. I don't trust Kirk Cousins to win more than one playoff game. And the defense, while I like it, isn't as good as I believe Tampa, and certainly not as good as the Los Angeles Rams. Philadelphia, there's a lot of hype around Philadelphia. I think USA Today had Philadelphia as the fourth best team in the NFC. I disagree. The roster, I think, is really good. I thought they had an excellent draft. Okay, you had Devonte Smith, who had a really good rookie season a year ago. You add A.J. Brown from the Tennessee Titans, who's, probably fringe top 10 receiver in the NFL. Very, very good player. Clear number one receiver. Philadelphia clearly got better this offseason. But I still have major questions about Jalen Hurts. Okay, against the elite teams, Jalen Hurts didn't just play bad. He struggled. The thing that I've always worried about Jalen Hurts is arm strength. Watch any deep throw made by Jalen Hurts. The ball, I always say on the show, the ball dies in the air. Right? It's not like a Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen deep throw where it just keeps going and going, and then it nosedives perfectly into the hands of the intended receiver. A lot of Jalen Hurts' deep balls, the receiver kind of has to come back for it. Like it just kind of flutters and then just sort of dies in the air. Like the receiver has to, turn and come back for it, and that's how Jalen Hurts threw a lot of his interceptions a year ago. That's how he struggled miserably in the playoff loss against Tampa Bay. So Jalen Hurts, do I think Philadelphia can make the playoffs? Yeah, I do. I do. I think they have one of the better running games in the NFL. But do I think that they are a Super Bowl contender? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You cannot make the Super Bowl if your quarterback is that limited. He's an excellent runner of the football, not questioning that. But if I'm down 10 in the fourth quarter, okay, with 8 minutes to go, can I trust you to throw me back into the game? I don't trust Jalen Hurts to be able to do that. Maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe he's like Lamar Jackson, right? Where Lamar really improved that aspect of his game, the ability to throw his team back into a game that they are trailing. But until I see it, I have my doubts with Jalen Hurts. I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are a Super Bowl contender in the NFC. Circling back to Dallas, I don't see how a team that didn't win a single playoff game a year ago, lost some of its key pieces, we can consider a Super Bowl team. I just can't. When you have the major limitation at head coach that is Mike McCarthy, when you have the major limitation at offensive coordinator that you have at with Kellen Moore. I love Dan Quinn running the defense this year. Really like Bones Fossil running the special teams, one of the better special teams coaches in the league, right? You still have some talent on the opposite side of the football. You still got, CeeDee Lamb, who I'm still not quite sold on as the number one receiver in the league. I still think he's very good. I'm not sure if he's a one. Zeke, does he have a bounce back here? I have major doubts. I'm much higher on Tony Pollard. And you still have some guys, Jalen Tolbert, Dak is very high on Jalen Tolbert. He talked about this other receiver. I forgot his name. That he liked how he was playing this training camp. Michael Gallup should come back midseason. The receiving core is solid. It's not elite. It's not Tampa's. It's not the Rams. It's not, Buffalo's. It's good. It's a good receiving core. It's not the Raiders. The offensive line has gotten worse. Tyron Smith has gotten hurt more often now than he ever has because he is getting up there in age. Zack Martin, same thing. Zack Martin is still an elite player. I don't think Tyron Smith is anymore. Zack Martin's still an elite player. He's dealt with injuries since 2020, so I have questions about whether or not he can stay healthy throughout the course of the season. Their center, Tyler Biotish, is average. Okay, their new draft pick, Tyler Smith, not Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, their new left guard, first-round pick. Yeah, on a Mike McCarthy team that led the league in penalties a year ago, Tyler Smith led college football in penalties at Tulsa a year ago. Boy, is that not a match made in football hell, if you ask me. So I have major questions about Tyler Smith. And at right tackle, I really like Terrence Steele and the improvement that he's made. I just think he's more suited to play at left tackle. I think he's a solid replacement for whenever Tyron Smith retires. Defensively, Defensively, folks, we know the monster that Micah Parsons is. Okay, we know this guy's going to have knock on wood, he stays healthy because, man, this guy has Hall of Fame potential. He's phenomenal. Outside of that, I like Odigizua, good run stopper. Neville Gallimore, solid. DeMarcus Lawrence is still serviceable, not a Pro Bowl, pass rusher at this rate in his career. They added Anthony Barr. He's on his last leg, folks. Leighton Vander Esch, injuries have robbed him of what could have been a solid career. Jabril Cox, he's dealing with injuries. The linebacking core is fine. It's not anywhere near elite, and the secondary is a massive liability for this defense, folks. I know Cowboys fans get all over me when I criticize Trayvon Diggs. Okay, he's the best ball hawk in the league. Trayvon Diggs is still probably going to have around 10 interceptions this year. He may lead the league in picks again. I don't know. I'm giving him a shot. But in terms of a one-on-one corner that I can consistently trust, folks, he got beat in practice the other day by the 5th or 6th string receiver. Okay, not the 5th or 6th string, but the 5th or 6th receiver on the depth chart. CeeDee Lamb was burning him, just cooking him all practice the other day. Okay, Trayvon Diggs, he's a gambler, right? He's a gambler. There's no other way around it. And so, do I trust the Cowboys secondary? Anthony Brown had a good year last year. Is he a solid number 2? Sure. You got the one kid, I'm forgetting his name, Kelvin Joseph. He's fine, right? We'll see what he has. The back end of the secondary safety unit is not great. I don't understand what there is to be high about in the Cowboys this year. I've said that since probably March, and I definitely said it after the draft. I don't know what there is to be excited about for the Cowboys this year outside of a possible NFC East title. I do think that they will beat Philadelphia out for the division. The Giants, we know, are still a disaster, even though they upgraded at head coach. Okay, Washington is going to, I think, be a slightly better than last year. But we know Carson Wentz, we think we can't trust Kirk Cousins in the playoffs. He at least has a playoff win on his resume. Carson Wentz doesn't have that. Carson Wentz had a great roster last year in Indianapolis and choked down the last 2 games against the Raiders and against the Jaguars, which was, an all-time bad performance on his part. It's a Dallas and Philly race next year. And I trust Dallas simply because they have the edge at quarterback and they have a good enough roster to beat Philadelphia's for the division title. But if we're talking golden year, if that's what Dak is referring to, a championship contending season, I'm sorry, Dak. I think the ceiling, the best case scenario for the Cowboys is a playoff win. That's the best case scenario. And I don't think they're going to get that. They win the division with 10, 11 wins. They go out immediately in the first round, whether it be to the Niners, to the Cardinals, to, I don't think it'll be to Philly, but Niners, Cardinals, I think is who will eliminate Dallas in the first round at Jerry World next year. And just like this year, Jerry will go home sad. The Cowboys fans will go home sad. It is what it is. Okay, this is not a Super Bowl contending team, even in the weak NFC. Okay, it's not a good enough roster to compete. The coaching staff loved Dan Quinn, really like Bones Fossil, not high on anybody else after that. I'm just not. Okay, now, on the flip side, if Dak is talking about a golden year and it being his best year, yeah, I think there's a shot of that happening in terms of individual success. Now, you could argue, well, does individual success at the quarterback position necessarily translate to team wins? Not necessarily. Never forget this. Drew Brees had some of the best seasons of his career from 2014 to 2016. And the Saints went 7-9, 7-9, 7-9. Why is that? Defense was average. They played in a tougher division at the time, the NFC South. They just simply were not playoff contenders at that point. But for the Cowboys, I think feel like they're in the same boat. Maybe not 7-9 bad. Again, I feel like they're a 10, 11 win team because of Dak. But can this be Dak Prescott's best individual year? Sure, I think it is, because I think it's going to have to be in order for the Cowboys to get to the playoffs. Keep in mind, for all of Amari Cooper's inconsistencies, and I wasn't, devastated that they traded him. I didn't like that they only got a 5th-round pick for him, but I wasn't heartbroken that they traded Amari Cooper to the Cleveland Browns. I was kind of hurt deep down when when Cedric Wilson left in free agency to go to Miami. That case, I was like, oh man, that's a loss right there. That one's gonna hurt Dak. Okay. It looks like Dalton Schultz is going to come back, but I don't know if he's playing the franchise tag or what. Yeah, we'll see what happens with him. He's about as booty as they come. Okay. But the thing for Dak is he is going to have to elevate a football team, a slightly above average football team. This is not a championship contending, team this year. It's just not, okay? So if CeeDee Lamb's your number one receiver, I have doubts. Okay, I haven't seen. I feel like this has gone underreported by the Dallas media. I don't know if the Dallas media is scared to put this out because Cowboys media usually, for the most part, they don't care to call out the team, the coach, the quarterback, the owner, anybody on their crap. They're not like that. It's not, Oklahoma City with Russell Westbrook. Okay, where it's like the only star they have in town. They don't want to tick him off. No. Dallas media is kind of similar to the New York media or to the LA media. They're no joke. I'm surprised that nobody in the Dallas media has pointed out the fact that the Cowboys took CeeDee Lamb over Justin Jefferson. Nobody's pointed that out. People have pointed out the fact that the Eagles forgot the kid's name, it was Jalen Reagor. I forgot the Eagles player the Eagles receiver that they took over Justin Jefferson. It was a much worse job on the part of Philadelphia. But Dallas could have had a top 5 receiver in their building, and they blew it. They got a very good receiver, CeeDee Lamb, who can play over a guy, Justin Jefferson, coming out of LSU, who is freaking phenomenal. Dak's going to have to elevate CD. He's going to have to elevate Jalen Tolbert and James Washington whenever he comes back from injury. Michael Gallup, he already has elevated him. He's going to have to continue. I mean, I love when these analysts talk about how key Dalton Schultz is to the Cowboys. Without Dak, what is Dalton Schultz? He's an average tight end. He's got Tony Pollard, who's I think an excellent running back. They don't use him, though. You know what I'm saying? They don't use Tony Pollard. They keep feeding the ball to Zeke, hoping he's going to, do the feed me thing. Well, he hasn't really had the opportunity to because he's on his last leg. He's aging about as fast as I've ever seen a running back age in my life. The offensive line is getting worse. The defense is getting worse. The coaching staff, particularly the head coach, extremely limited. And yet we see Dak as this guy who's going to save the Cowboys. There's only so much that a man can do. Okay? There's only so much, there's only so far that one man can take an average football team. That's what I'm saying. Whew. All right, off my soapbox for a second. Grady Edwards is in the comments. He says, who is the greatest tight end in NFL history in your opinion? Before I get to the second part of your comment, Grady, I've always said it's Tony Gonzalez. I've always said it's Tony Gonzalez. I get the argument for Gronk. I get the argument for other guys. But my thing for Tony Gonzalez has always been this. For the vast majority of his career, he had very average quarterback play. Very average quarterback play. Probably the best quarterback that Tony Gonzalez ever suited up with, in all honesty, was Matt Ryan at the end of his career. And yet Tony Gonzalez, wait a second, has the second most catches of all time to Jerry Rice? That doesn't even make sense. With the average quarterback play he had? Now, I get the quarterback position was as emphasized as it is now. But now, was he a great blocker? No. But second most catches in history was by a tight end? Gronk, as great as he is, he did have Tom Brady. And I still think Gronk's probably second or third greatest. But that, to me, is what separates Tony from Gronk. And Tony was more available than Gronk. But to get to the second part of your question, Grady, he said, my roommate and I got into a heated debate over this one last night. I say Gronk, but I think Tony Gonzalez has a darn good argument. I think you can absolutely make the argument for Gronk. Yeah, absolutely, no question about it. I think when you're talking about, he's a much better run blocker than Tony Gonzalez. So absolutely. Even when Gronk started to age, the injuries came with greater regularity. Gronk was still an excellent run blocker in New England, excuse me, and in Tampa. So, Gronk, if you want to say Gronk's greatest tight end of all time, I'm not gonna lose my mind. I'm not gonna fight you over that because it's not like you've got someone else. It's not like you got George Kittle's the greatest tight end ever, and I love George Kittle, but he's not the greatest tight end ever. If you want to say Gronk is, I'm not gonna fight you on that. My personal number one's Gonzalez. I got Gronk is probably my number two. I'm gonna say it's a toss up on number three between either Jason Witten or Shannon Sharp. You want to talk about Antonio Gates was a great tight end. If you want to talk about Kellen Winslow, there's plenty of great options that you could have. I think Travis Kelce is going up the ranks. Never forget, Travis Kelce has been elevated by Patrick Mahomes, but Travis Kelce, look at his numbers even pre-Patrick Mahomes. He was no joke. He was no joke even with Alex Smith. So I think he's climbing up the list of the greatest tight ends ever. But good question, Gray. I do love these all-time discussions. And I am going to rank my top 10 players in the NFL at the end of the show. So definitely stay tuned for that. From the Dallas Cowboys, back to the NBA, and to the most intriguing story right now, I believe, which is Kevin Durant. We're a month in. He requested his trade in late June, early July? So it's been well over a month, and still nothing. Heck, we haven't heard really a trade offer for KD in probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I would say it's safe to say that the market for Kevin Durant is about as low as it's ever been. Okay? In big part because teams are looking around and saying, wait, hang on a minute. Buddy, you got 4 years left in your deal and you're already wanting out after only 3 years in Brooklyn. Given how Golden State flourished even without you, sure, they were better with you. Of course, you're Kevin Durant. But they, did hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy, and you weren't there to see it. You weren't there to contribute. And in Brooklyn, when it's your team, when you are driving the bus, to use the Charles Barkley term, it hasn't gone so great. One playoff series win since he's been in Brooklyn. He's gotten swept in the first round a year ago a few months ago by the Boston Celtics. And especially the fact of what you would have to give up to go get Kevin Durant. It's like, are we going to mortgage our entire future, whether it be our young players, all-star players, or even guys like in the case of the Boston Celtics, a guy like Jason Tatum, are we swapping him and saying Marcus Smart for KD? I don't think Boston really wants to do that. Phoenix, I don't think can do that. I don't think Phoenix has the assets to do it. Other teams, Minnesota has been brought up. They couldn't really get a deal done. I know John Jones brought up the Pelicans. That's, it doesn't look like there's been any talks between those two. And so the market is pretty low on Kevin Durant. So reportedly, according to a reliable source, I think they told Heavy Sports was the outlet, but the source told Heavy Sports that Kevin Durant has met with Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets. What was discussed, of course, we don't know. But I can imagine that it has something to do with the fact that, Joe Tsai is looking like, hey, Kevin, you did ask for a trade. You have asked for quite a bit in terms of where you want to go. We haven't really, Brooklyn has been the sellers. Other teams haven't been buyers of Kevin Durant. The Nets have been the sellers. They've called Boston. They've called Minnesota. They've called Golden State. Nothing. So I almost wonder if this meeting had to do with the fact that maybe sort of a come to Jesus moment in some way for KD, saying like, this is it. Like you're probably have to play her this year. Does he get traded midseason? I don't know. I don't think KD's the type like a James Harden to just, show up to camp out of shape, kind of pout, not talk to his teammates, not work with coaches, and pretty much quit his way out of a team. KD's not that type of player. KD, I've seen workout videos in the offseason. He's in, prime shape. He looks great. He looks like Kevin Durant. Okay, KD's going to be great next year's season regardless of who he plays with. But I do think the market is still at an all-time low. And John points out in the comments, he says, reports say that Kyrie and the Nets are in a better place these days. And so I think that probably was discussed too, was the fact that, hey, Kyrie's staying in Brooklyn because the Lakers were the only team interested and they're not going to get a deal done. So Kyrie's got 1 year left in his deal, the last year of an opt-in, a player opt-in. He's going to play for Brooklyn this season. And so I think the Nets probably told KD like, hey, nobody wants, or not, if they didn't say nobody wants you, but no one's really making an offer right now. We brought you here in 2019 to go deliver us a championship. Think of this as, say, our last dance. We think about the last dance, the Chicago Bulls in 1998. Obviously, they were far more accomplished than the Nets were, or Nets are. But say, like, this is, think of this as sort of the one last hurrah, the one last shot for this KD Kyrie experiment to work. Do I think it will? No, I don't think they'll get further than a playoff series win. I look at Milwaukee as better, and I think Milwaukee and Boston, to me, are the class of the East. I'll always give Miami a puncher's chance because it's Miami and it's Pat Riley. And Pat Riley, I'm telling y'all, I maintain the evil genius Pat Riley still has something rolled up his sleeve. Just watch. I don't know if it'll come this offseason, but I think it'll come this upcoming season. Pat Riley's got something up his sleeve. But I absolutely look at Miami as better than Brooklyn. I look at Philadelphia as better than Brooklyn. They added PJ Tucker. Milwaukee improved. Boston improved. I mean, how the Nets really improved? Royce O'Neal. They brought back Patty Mills. Yeah, it's fine, but I don't see this team getting further than a playoff series win. So does this meeting with the owner, Joe Tsai, does that do anything in regards to whether or not that they can compete this year? I don't know. I don't know. Kyrie's availability is always a question because a couple of years ago, he took 2 weeks off randomly out of nowhere. A year ago, it was the vaccine thing. This year, it'll be something else. It'll be something else. Either an injury, because Kyrie has struggled to stay healthy throughout the course of his career, or it'll be something else that only Kyrie Irving could use as an excuse to not play. Who knows? Like I said, two weirdest guys in sports are Kyrie Irving and Aaron Rodgers. And one thing I'll give Aaron, at least Aaron's committed somewhat to football, even if it does require psychedelic drugs. Kyrie, who knows where he's at. But I don't see I see Brooklyn as a team that can win a playoff series, be one of the last 4 teams standing, possibly in the East. They are not beating Boston. They are not beating Milwaukee. And I wouldn't see them beating a Miami or a Philadelphia. So I guess actually do the math. That actually means they would not win a first-round playoff series. So there you go. There you go. So I think we're smelling another first-round exit for Brooklyn. I don't see them as a team that's going to go anywhere this season unless they make some drastic moves. John said he definitely owns something, LOL. He is, no question. Grady asked, do you think the Ben Simmons impact may be bigger than we know of the KD trade? I mean, it depends on what you mean by impact. If you're saying that, Ben Simmons, the fact that he was supposed to come back for Game 4 of the Boston series and then got cold feet and backed off, and we're still not real sure about the back injuries and whatnot, and he was practicing with the team, he was dunking in practice, he looked fine and still didn't play. Did KD kind of get tired of that, as KD is a guy who has said himself, as his teammates have said, current and former teammates talk about, man, KD just loves to hoop. He just loves to play basketball. Okay, so KD probably does, or Ben Simmons probably does rub KD the wrong way because he's not even close to as committed to the game as Kevin is. Maybe. Question is, how much will Ben Simmons be, available next year? And Grady says it could be a lot closer to the Kyrie issue than we think. Very well could be the case. Absolutely, because those are two guys that we know aren't exactly committed to being available at all times for their teams. Whether it's Ben Simmons in Philadelphia or Kyrie wherever he's been. And of course, Ben Simmons, again, like I said, has yet to play a game with the Brooklyn Nets. That's why I said, even at the time, you guys know I'm not a James Harden fan, although I've committed him for what he's done with his body and, committing to the organization this offseason. I've always said this about James Harden. He's, for the most part, he's available. And so just that alone, to me, is what won the Philadelphia 76ers the trade this past February. I said at the time, I thought Philadelphia won the trade. And there's nothing that I've seen that has made me think otherwise, especially if Brooklyn possibly breaks up. If KD does get traded, if Kyrie ends up leaving next offseason, which I think he will, I think he's going to the Lakers in 2023. And so then what do they do with KD? Who knows? So then it's a team with Ben Simmons and Royce O'Neal. Have fun, Brooklyn. All right, moving on to the NFL. Get a drink of Gatorade first. And no, that is not an advertisement for Gatorade. I promise. But top 10 players in the NFL. It is something, I know the NFL Network in a couple weeks is going to be doing their annual top 100 players in the NFL. They've been doing this since 2011, and it's voted on by the players. Now, if I were to do a top 100 players show, I'd need about 2 hours to do so, to explain why I had each player, maybe more than 2 hours, to explain why I had each player ranked where I ranked them. But it is a tough list because if we're talking about, I always say it, best and valuable are two different things. It's what drives me crazy about the NBA is I think they do a bad job at differentiating what best and most valuable really means. But if we were doing a most valuable players list, the only top 10 in the NFL, most valuable players, the only guy that I think would be on the top 10 list would be Aaron Donald, honestly. Because we know the value that quarterbacks have to their franchises. We know the value. If you want me to tell you how valuable quarterbacks are to their teams, let me just present to you the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, this is a team that's been irrelevant for 2.5 decades. Joe Burrow shows up, coming off an injury in year 2. Obviously, they did add Jamar Chase. They have Joe Mixon, who's an excellent running back, but talent that's average at best from there, with about as bad of an offensive line as the Super Bowl team has ever had. And Joe Burrow took them to the Super Bowl and was on the doorstep of winning it. Like that's how important the quarterback position is in the NFL these days. And that's why it means everything. John says Jonathan Taylor. I love Jonathan Taylor. I think he's phenomenal. I love, check the tape. I said Jonathan Taylor once he came into I said back in 2020, once Jonathan Taylor came into the NFL out of Wisconsin, he would be in the conversation at some point at being the best running back in the league. And John also says Derrick Henry. Yeah, Derrick Henry could definitely make that argument. I think more so than Jonathan Taylor, as much as I love him. But enough of this most valuable stuff. Let's scrap that. Let's move on. My top 10 players, I should say, top 10 players in the NFL, starting with number 10, the man who apparently takes ayahuasca, Aaron Rodgers. The back-to-back MVP, the 4-time MVP overall a season ago. He threw for touchdowns, only 4 picks, had a completion percentage of 69%, and a passer rating of 112. Aaron Rodgers has historically been the king of passer ratings. If I'm not mistaken, he might have the highest of all time. Here's the thing with Aaron, and I've always said he is arguably the greatest thrower of the football that the sport has ever seen. You could honestly make that case in terms of how effortless he makes it look. He's got the arm, he's got the accuracy, he's got the ability to move in the pocket. Aaron Rodgers is as good as they come. Okay, there's a reason. I don't think he should have 4 MVPs, but he's absolutely deservedly so, a multi-time MVP in this league. My criticism of him has always been in the postseason. Since that Super Bowl after the 2010 season, he has a record of 7-9. Okay, and some of those losses, he has either played poorly or has been in games that he should have won and did not. Okay, so I get the how pretty he makes it look. Okay, he's absolutely, clearly one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league and has been for well over a decade. But if you're talking about a guy that I can trust to consistently get my team in position to compete for a championship, nah, I can't trust this dude. Aaron Rodgers is my 10th best player in the NFL. To number 9, the quarterback who led his team to the Super Bowl, improbably, Mr. Joe Burrow. He has thrown for a year ago. He threw for 4,600 yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 picks, had a completion percentage of 70%, and a passer rating of 103. What Joe Burrow pulled off a year ago, I cannot emphasize enough. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. We've seen quarterbacks like a Derek Carr, for example, take a team that has so many holes and so many flaws, in the case of the Raiders, so much controversy, and get them to the playoffs. Maybe in some cases, like Andrew Luck, win a playoff game or 2. But what Joe Burrow did for the Cincinnati Bengals, a defense that was good, not great, a receiving group that outside of Jamar Chase is and an offensive line that, simply put, was maybe the worst in the league. And we know you have got to protect your quarterback. And to Cincinnati's credit, they have upgraded their line this offseason. Joe Burrow getting this team to the Super Bowl against an absolutely superior Los Angeles Rams team and having them in position to win the football game is incredible. It's incredible what this guy pulled off, okay? We know he's got the accuracy, the arm strength. It comes and it goes. That was one of my concerns about Joe Burrow coming out of LSU. His arm strength isn't maybe what you'd like it to be, but it's good enough. He's, again, moves well in the pocket. He's great. You watch that AFC Championship game and all those sacks that he broke. Okay, he's big, strong, powerful, excellent leader. The whole football team. He's the heartbeat of the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow is my 9th best player in the NFL. Number 8, sticking with the quarterbacks. We're 3 players in, and it's all quarterbacks. My man, Josh Allen. I told y'all Josh Allen will be the real deal coming out of Wyoming. 4,400 yards, 36 touchdowns, 15 picks, a completion percentage of 63%, and a 92 passer rating. The thing with Josh Allen that we all know about is the arm strength, okay? He's got about as great arm strength as we've ever seen at this position. Okay, this is a guy who could probably throw it 100 yards. Okay, and throw it on a rope. You look at some of these rollout plays. I know there was a play against the Raiders. I think it was in 2020 where he rolled out to his right and found Cole Beasley in the back of the end zone. I mean, just threw that ball on a rope. Okay, I mean, just elite arm strength. has improved his accuracy each year since he's come into the NFL, has really surprised me a lot as a leader of the Buffalo Bills. And something else, too, a year ago in 2021, he had the highest passer rating that any quarterback has ever had in a single postseason. Now, you could say, well, that was only 2 games, but in the win against New England over what was a pretty solid New England defense, he basically threw a perfect game. 7 possessions, 7 touchdowns, with no punts, no field goals, and no turnovers. Josh Allen did that. Okay, Josh Allen has elevated the Buffalo Bills from an organization that was, one of kind of the laughingstocks in the NFL to a franchise that right now, according to Vegas, is the favorite to play in Super Bowl 57 in Arizona. That's how great Josh Allen is. We know, just watch the game against Kansas City and Mahomes. He was the last reason, as we all know, that the Bills lost that playoff game. Josh Allen, to me, is the 8th best player in the NFL. To number 7, I feel like we've forgotten a little bit about this guy because he was hurt for half the season last year. Derrick Henry, King Henry. Now, he did not run for 1,000 yards last season, but that's because he played only 8 games because he broke his foot. Derrick Henry, again, a year ago, led the NFL in yards per game with 117 and also had 10 touchdowns in 8 games. So that means if he had stayed healthy, he would have not only had an opportunity, if you look at the numbers, do the math, he would have possibly had yet another 2,000-yard season, which he had a couple of years ago in 2020, but he would have ran for 20 touchdowns if the math adds up. Okay, John kind of pointed out in the comments there about non-quarterbacks that are among the 10 most valuable players in the league. Derrick Henry's in that group. It's not a knock on Ryan Tannehill, good player, starter in this league. But once Derrick Henry went down, the Titans' offense didn't really look the same, okay? Their defense carried them to a lot of those wins. And when you talk about a guy who can, at the running back position, in an NFL where the running back is the least important that it's ever been, this guy is a consistent, just pencil it in. He's going to run for 100 yards and a touchdown a game. That's just what he does. Of course, we all remember the playoff run in 2019 where he pretty much ran the Titans to the AFC Championship game. This past year, he was on pace for another 2,000-yard season and 20 touchdowns. This guy is still, and I love Jonathan Taylor. You guys know that. Loved him since college. But Derrick Henry is still clearly the best running back in the NFL. Derrick Henry is my 7th best player overall in the NFL. To number 6, a guy who is on a new team, Devonte Adams. A year ago with the Packers, 123 catches, 1,500 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Now we know, obviously, Devonte, with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, that certainly helps a bit. But just these improvements since his rookie year in 2014 has been incredible. As great of a route runner as there is in the league, big-bodied, fast, great hands. Pretty anything that you could possibly want in a wide receiver, you've got Devonte Adams. And so now he comes to Vegas with his college buddy, Derek Carr. They had a great connection in college at Fresno State. I think Devonte Adams is once again due for another huge year. You can make a strong case he's the best receiver in the NFL, and I would not fight you on it at all. Okay, he's still as great as they come. He has stayed relatively healthy throughout the course of his career, so he's reliable. Devonte Adams, to me, is the 6th best player in the NFL. To number 5, we're in the top 5 now. The Defensive Player of the Year almost broke a record. TJ Watt, a big record, I should say. TJ Watt led the league in quarterback hits with 39 and in tackles for loss with 21, and he tied Michael Strahan's single-season sack record with 22.5 sacks. This guy is an absolute monster off the edge. As great as his brother J.J. Watt was in his prime, J.J. could not get around the edge as quickly as T.J. Watt could, or can. Talking about, big, strong, flies off the edge into the backfield. Again, 22.5 sacks, which is incredible considering the fact that the Steelers trailed in a lot of the games that they played in. And the fact that they, a lot of those teams were running the football, and he still was able to rack up the amount of sacks that he did, 22.5. I can't have a guy that ties an all-time sack record by Michael Strahan, and given the history that T.J. Watt has had thus far in his career, and not put him in the top 5. T.J. Watt, to me, is the 5th best player in the NFL. To number 4, my twin baby, the Super Bowl MVP, Cooper Kupp. The Triple Crown winner, 145 catches, 1,900 yards, and 16 touchdowns. also was the Super Bowl MVP. He is the first player, it's the first receiver in NFL history, second player in NFL history to win the Triple Crown and win receiving Triple Crown and win Super Bowl MVP. The only other guy to do that is the greatest receiver ever, Jerry Rice. Cooper Kupp did that in one season. And he got votes to be MVP, mind you. And so you talk about, he goes from 900 receiving yards in 2020 to 1,900 in 2021. Obviously, the addition of Matthew Stafford helped that drastically. But he's one of the few receivers, kind of like Devonte Adams. He's one of the few receivers that you can double, and it really doesn't matter, okay? There's not much you can do to stop Cooper Kupp. You talk about, by the way, the attention that he brings on one side of the field, which clears the way for other Rams receivers to get their targets and their catches in. Again, great route runner, reliable hands. Not as fast maybe as a Devonte Adams, but in terms of reliability, in terms of consistency, each and every game that this dude plays, you can't really quantify what he's meant for the Los Angeles Rams, and obviously we all know they could not have won the Super Bowl without him. Cooper Kupp is my fourth best player in the NFL. To number 3, we're going back to the quarterbacks. Number 3, Patrick Mahomes. Again, the fact that people thought that this guy had a down year if 4,800 yards, 37 touchdowns with 13 picks, a 66 for completion percentage, and a passer rating of 98.5, if that's a down year, man, I'd love to have a down year. Okay, we're talking about a guy, folks, who's won an MVP, who's won a Super Bowl MVP, who, again, in his first year as a starter, threw 50 touchdown passes, which has only ever been done by some guys you may have heard of before, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. And Patrick Mahomes did that in his first season. Year 2, wins the Super Bowl, wins Super Bowl MVP. Year 3, gets to the Super Bowl, loses to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in the big game. And a year ago, we all know he had a bad second half against the Cincinnati Bengals when the Chiefs blew that big lead for an opportunity to go to a third straight Super Bowl. But I'm really, really surprised. I get the losses Kansas City's had in the offseason. I think their defense is going to be significantly worse this year, but I'm shocked at the amount of people who have completely dismissed Kansas City in terms of being a Super Bowl contender. If you've got that guy behind center, you've always got a shot, okay? Andy Reid hasn't retired yet. Okay, you still have Travis Kelce. You added Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling to your receiving core. Mecole Hardman's still there. It's not like you're going downhill if you're the Kansas City Chiefs too much, despite the losses of Tyreek Hill and the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. Patrick Mahomes, a down year. 4,800 yards, 37 touchdowns, passer rating of nearly 100. Whew. Man, I'd love to have a down year. Look out for Patrick Mahomes to be right back in the MVP conversation this season. Patrick Mahomes is my third best player in the NFL. To number 2, he is my second best player in the NFL. We all know he's the greatest quarterback of all time. He is the greatest player, in my opinion, of all time. The man, the myth, the legend, Tom Brady. A year ago, you look at the numbers this guy put up. Again, a record season. 5,300 yards with 43 touchdowns, 12 picks, a completion percentage of 67, and a passer rating of 102. I thought Brady should have been the MVP, folks. At age 44. Had his career high in passing yards. Career high at age 44. Keep in mind, something about Tom Brady, which is remarkable. And I've read the stat off a few times of the show. He's thrown more touchdown passes in his 40s than he did in his 20s. Some of that, I will admit, is because the game has changed and the rules have changed in favor of the quarterback position. But no athlete in the history of American sports, be it team, be it individual, has aged better, has been more consistent, has been more great as this guy has consistently been. We all know 7 Super Bowl titles. He's got more Super Bowls than any NFL franchise has. He's looking for number 8. I believe that this will be his last season at age 45. He's always said he wanted to play to this age. This is it. His Jordan year 23. It's only fitting. 2 GOATs. Tom Brady, to me, is still the best quarterback in the NFL, and to me is the second best player in the NFL. And so you know who that leaves as number 1. Number 1, the best player in football, to me, without a shadow of a doubt, is Aaron Donald. The best player on the best team in the NFL. Aaron Donald's my number one. You're talking about a guy who has been a 7-time first-team All-Pro since his second year in the league. He's been first-team All-Pro. Okay, so shoe it in this year, 2022. Thankfully, he did not retire. Not thankfully for quarterbacks and offensive linemen, but thankfully for us, the fans, and certainly for the Los Angeles Rams, he did not retire. He is coming back this season. You're talking about a guy who just a few years ago, we talk about T.J. Watt, almost broke Strahan's record. He tied Strahan's record for the most sacks in a single season. T.J. Watt did that as an edge rusher. Aaron Donald had 20 and a half sacks, so 2 fewer sacks, as an interior lineman, as an interior defensive lineman, okay? Just if you want me to explain to you how good Aaron Donald is, words don't do it justice. I can't. All I would tell you to do is watch the second half of this year's Super Bowl. It was as dominant a defensive performance in the Super Bowl as I've ever seen. And I've made the case to this show before. I think Aaron Donald's the third greatest defensive player of all time. I think it goes LT, great Lawrence Taylor, of course, who I think is the second best NFL player ever to Tom Brady. Greatest defensive players, LT, Reggie White, Aaron Donald. I think with his performance in the Super Bowl, in which I thought personally he should have won Super Bowl MVP, I thought he passed the great primetime Deion Sanders. No player in recent memory has been as dominant as this man has been. Aaron Donald, to me, absolutely is the best player in the National Football League. The best player in the best league. So before I get to your comments, I see I've got quite a few here. Before I get to them, let me rank them. Let me put down my list once again. Number 10, Aaron Rodgers. Number 9, Joe Burrow. Number 8, Josh Allen. Number 7, Derrick Henry. Number 6, Devonte Adams. Number 5, TJ Watt. Number 4, Cooper Kupp. Number 3, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, Tom Brady. And number 1, Aaron Donald. That is my top 10 players currently in the NFL. All right, let's get to the comments here. Let's see. I got to get my breath a little bit after that. All right, Grady asks, or says, probably more of an earlier this week question. Does Aaron Rodgers have... Gosh, I love you, Grady. You're the man. Does Aaron Rodgers have a future starring in 60s, 70s style hippie movies after his playing career is done? Make love, not war, brother. Maybe. I'm not ruling it out. Listen, this is Aaron Rodgers we're talking about. I'm not ruling anything out with this guy. He is the most... Remember Dos Equis, the alcoholic beverage? Remember those commercials they used to run? With the older gentleman, I think he may have been Hispanic. I can't remember. But they called him the most interesting. Remember, they said he is the most interesting man in the world. That's Aaron Rodgers. He is the most interesting man in the world. You don't know what he's going to do. Okay, last offseason, he grew his hair out. This offseason, he got a big tattoo. And he's dating a woman who is quite possibly could be a witch doctor named Blue of Earth. He's taking psychedelics. He's the most interesting man in the world. He's the most interesting man in the NFL. You don't know where this guy is gonna go. So does he have a future starring in 60s, 70s style hippie movies? Sure. There's always a place for people like Aaron Rodgers. I'm not ruling that out. Grady says, among the greatest quarterback talents ever, it's up there between him, talking about Aaron Rodgers, it's up there between him, Pat Mahomes, Peyton Manning, and Elway. Yeah, no, I would probably put Marino in there as well, but in terms of the greatest, most natural quarterback talents, yeah, I agree with your list. The guys who made it look absolutely effortless. In talking about, Rodgers and Mahomes, they, of course, they're still playing. They make it look effortless. Elway was just as natural a throw of the football as there was. So was Peyton. So was Dan Marino. Just all-time great. Grady says, Derrick Henry is the last of old school power backs. I love King Henry so much, like Adrian Peterson. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good point. Old school running backs. We don't see many like him. If I had to, think of a comparison, and I'm going back 3-4 decades, 5 decades possibly. Talking about a comparison for Derrick Henry, I think Earl Campbell. Earl Campbell was one of the greatest, sort of bruiser style running backs playing for the Houston Oilers. Ironically, the same franchise Derrick Henry plays for, because of course the Houston Oilers became the Tennessee Titans. But yeah, he's most running backs we see today are like your Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara types who can, I've always said the one hole in Derrick Henry's game is he's not great catching the ball out of the backfield. But if that's the only hole in his game, then he's still as effective as any running back that we've seen in this league in the last decade. So, but yeah, I can see the comparisons between him and Adrian Peterson. Grady asks, will you go as far as to say TJ Watt will go down as better than JJ, who has accomplished more than him now? JJ's greatness has been forgotten to a degree because since 2016, 2018 has been the only season where he was the JJ Watt we remember in his prime. Yeah. And that's always kind of the crappy part about that JJ Watt's career is that the injuries just kept coming and coming and coming. And even last year he dealt with a major injury and missed significant time. So I definitely agree with you. JJ, people forget how great JJ Watt was in his prime. I think he was an MVP candidate in 2014. I think he had like 20 sacks or something as a defensive tackle. I mean, he was just dominant. But will I go so far as to say TJ Watt will go down as better than JJ? Will he? I think there's a chance. The thing if TJ is more durable than his brother, then yes. If he's on the field more often than his brother has been, yes, I think TJ Watt will be possibly remembered as a greater player than JJ Watt. Let's see. Going down the list. Grady says, no issue with Donald. I'd probably put Mahomes and Brady over him, but Manny's certainly up there. Wouldn't put him worse than 4 without a doubt. The reason I've got a number 1 is I don't think that we've seen a player, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that can single-handedly take over games. I mean, of the guys on my list, let me look back at my list again. Guys that can single-handedly take over games, like just by themselves. You could argue Derrick Henry could. Mahomes, Brady, Donald. That's pretty much where I'd end the list. Devonte Adams is a wide receiver, so he plays the most dependent position in the league. He needs the quarterback to get the ball to him. Same with Cooper Kupp. TJ Watt is great, but can single-handedly take over a game? No, he's not on that level with Aaron Donald. To me, he's in a class of his own. Donald is in a class of his own in terms of stopping the run, rushing the passer. And it's again, I thought personally, to me, I would have, as great as Cooper Kupp is, and I didn't have a problem with my twin being voted as the Super Bowl MVP, but I would have voted Aaron Donald as the MVP for the simple fact of this, that when it was looking like the game was starting to slip away from the Rams, because remember, start of the second half, the first play of the second half, Burrow hits T. Higgins on a 75-yard touchdown. It should have been offensive pass interference, but they didn't call it. So first play out of halftime, Cincinnati scores a 75-yard touchdown. The next Rams offensive play, Stafford throws a pick. And it's like, uh-oh. Okay, Bengals are starting to feel the momentum. Burrow's getting hot. Like, it's starting to slip away from the Rams a little bit. And Aaron Donald gets a huge sack on third down. And the Rams pretty much rode the momentum from there. He cleared the way for guys like Von Miller to get involved. Leonard Floyd, Ashawn Robinson had a big Super Bowl. Like that's to me the mark of a great player. And if you're a defense, is can you make guys better? Aaron Donald's a defensive player and makes the other guys on the defensive line better, significantly better. And so, yeah, I can't. If you want to put Brady and Mahomes over him, okay. I just don't think that we've seen a play. It's almost Shaq-like. It's like nobody, we're never going to think of Aaron Donald as the greatest NFL player ever. Like, nor should we. We're never going to look at Shaquille O'Neal as the greatest NBA player ever, nor should we. But in terms of pure dominance, the fact that there's nothing you can do to stop this guy without seriously compromising the other sides of your offensive line. There's nothing you could. I mean, the Bengals were triple teaming him. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. He was still making a huge impact on the game. So I've never seen a guy quite like him. I really haven't. Again, the only 2 players defensively all time that I would put over Aaron Donald are Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White. That's it. And both of those guys, like Aaron Donald, could single-handedly take over a game. But I know there's been a lot of debate, too, about whether Aaron Donald can pass LT as the greatest defensive player ever. The only way he can do that is if he wins a league MVP. And in a quarterback's league today, I don't see Aaron Donald doing that because LT, of course, is the last defensive player to win an MVP. I don't see that happening for Aaron Donald. But still, I mean, he's just a monster. He's just a monster. There's no question about it. All right. That is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to check out Carving It Up on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. Be sure to check out the Carving It Up podcast as well on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. So, hope everybody has a great weekend. Football is, well, we pretty much started it last night, right? Hall of Fame game, preseason's approaching. It's football. I'll watch it. I'm sure you will as well. The NFL season, folks, is 34 days away. Walter Payton numbers away. Sweetness numbers away. We are so close. 34 days. So, till Monday, have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. I hope this podcast ain't one to miss. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.